We are back with the pursuit of ownership. We have another pre-ownership underwater with our very own George Hariri.
Yeah, I'm excited. I made the joke pre-air about how today's an upgrade for Tyler. He's back on with George instead of Matt, and I have to keep the tradition alive of roasting Matt when he's not on air. So we're gonna start there, and we probably won't stop at some point.
This is the OG George Hariri, so I'm happy to be back with him. We are here with Donald. I'm gonna have to be a little bit humble here. I don't know much about what we're gonna be talking about. My role in this is extracting details and learning along with you guys. Really happy to have you two here.
Donald, which by the way is one of our least favorite names we've ever used on Practice Underwater. For no reason related to politics, Donald is back on, and we're trying to keep the names the same. So rather than thinking of something cool or fun or exciting, we're going to go with Donald because that was his name on Practice Underwater in his interview with Matt. We're keeping that the same today. So how's it going, Donald?
Fantastic. I couldn't think of anything better to do during this exact moment of time than to talk to you two. So.
Yeah, I'm sensing a hint of sarcasm, which I don't appreciate.
No, not at all. 100% honest.
That's the level of buzzkill I was expecting from Donald.
Yeah, so, no, Donald's energy level is low, and we're going to try to elevate it. But if he stays this big of a buzzkill the whole episode, then we're just going to have to take over for you, okay?
We're going to have to derail, for sure.
Okay, fine.
All right, so let's remind people, can you just, Donald, tell us a little bit about your practice? And, for if they haven't listened to Practice Underwater, tell us a little bit about the office that you bought, how long ago, how big it is, and obviously, right, pre-COVID, what were you guys doing, production, collections, all that stuff?
Yeah. So we just finished our 1 year kind of anniversary with my office. When I bought it early June of 2019, they were doing about 55 a month. Very little no marketing except for like the yellow pages, whatever that is. And, a very older population, not very many young families, that kind of stuff in the practice, referring out most specialty procedures, things like that. I took over the first month or two. The seller was still kind of, filtering around, and we really only had one doctor operatory, so we didn't really do much. But from the third month on, we really increased productions and collections. And so, in the last, let's say 3 months before COVID, we were, between 75 and 90 in production and around 80 in collections at that point. Then obviously, COVID-19 happened and everybody went home. So
everybody went home. I love that. What a great way of describing COVID-19. Everyone went home and stayed there forever.
The euphemism.
But no, so we were in a really good place. We were basically right on track to get to my 1 year goals, which is just, getting us 8 to 85 collections really consistently. We were right on track for that, and we were even on track for that in March before we had to.
Before people went home.
Yeah, before we went home. So
we're going to hear an ad, and then we're going to jump right in.
This episode is brought to you by Swell. So all of us who are already using Swell know that it crushes reputation management. It's like turning on a steady stream of reviews that requires no effort from your team and just works. It's amazing. Additionally, it makes it easy to stay in touch with all of your patients before and after their visits. And it even has a great way to set up a virtual waiting room. But there's more good news. Swell has a brand new version of their platform. And on top of being simpler than ever to use, you can now actually get patients to pay via mobile, which is incredible. The reason that Swell is so effective at getting reviews is they make it easy. They've now brought that same ease of use to paying for dental treatment even after patients have left the office. Mobile payments are a great way to text them a reminder so they can pay at their convenience right on their phone. You can pay via credit or debit card, ACH, or even Apple Pay or Google Pay with just a few taps. No more phone calls, no more chasing people down with emails and letters that always seem to get lost. And it gets better. This new release includes Swell Schedule, which is an easy way for patients to request an appointment time that works for them, so you can lock down those appointments quicker. Listen, Swell is one of those things that you just need to try it out, turn it on, see the results, and then you're converted and you're like, well, I'm never going to shut this off. Listeners of the Shared Practices podcast can try Swell for free for 30 days. No commitment. Just set it up, See the results for yourself before you pay anything. To take advantage of this offer, head to swellcx.com/shared practices. That's swellcx.com/shared practices.
So tell us a little bit about why you're here. I haven't told Tyler a whole lot. You were sending me Facebook messages, which, by the way, I don't always respond to, but Donald and I have been friends since D1 at dental school. So he gets special access where I'll send more than a thumbs up in replies. And so
plenty
we
of
were
thumbs up. So
yeah.
By the way, I just want to say to anyone who has ever gotten a thumbs up from George, and I've gotten my fair share, it's nothing personal. Well, it is personal, but it's a personal trait of George's. It has nothing to do with you. I just want people to know that.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of the thumbs up. It's a great conversation killer.
Yeah.
And it's also a great acknowledgement of a message. Just
Yeah.
thumbs up. Got it. Thanks for sending.
Rest assured, everyone, he is equally disinterested in all of you.
He does not discriminate.
So Donald has an interesting opportunity here, and we were messaging back and forth last night, and I was like, you know what? Stop. Let's talk about this tomorrow morning on air. And so Donald was nice enough to come back on. So tell Tyler about what you're looking at and
Please.
and why you're looking at it and everything that you're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, so we're looking at a potential practice merger. There is a sort of kind of high-end-ish, but still kind of PPO heavy office that's about 3.5 miles from mine. That's closer to where me and my wife and child live. That is an office that I had in the past attempted to buy, actually.
Okay.
Prior to buying my office, the timing really just didn't work out with it, and so it just didn't work out. But I bought my office in June 2019, and this one was sold later in 2019.
Okay.
So it's an office that, when it was sold, was doing about $100,000 a month. The buyer was able to get it back up to that point pre-COVID, and then again everyone went home, and so the buyer kind of realized in the process of doing that ownership wasn't really what he was cut out for.
It's a quick turnaround.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
it's like 4 months.
Yeah. Wow. So he's basically been looking for a buyer since he bought it. Because it just wasn't. As you guys know, your mental health can deteriorate, your physical health, all that stuff, and so.
As we know, yes.
Yes,
Our mental health has deteriorated. We understand that concept.
Yeah. In case there wasn't enough evidence of that. Keep listening. But yeah, so he just kind of understood that pretty early on this probably wasn't what long term he wanted to be doing, and I had actually gotten in touch with him pretty early on, kind of just to like, how are you doing, that kind of thing, but really asking, hey, are things falling apart, which they were, and so
Sure.
we've had conversations in the prior months during COVID even about him selling the practice to me, and then me basically moving my patient base over there. It's a 5-op office that is kind of it's 27 to 2,800 square feet, so it's not obviously design ergonomics was not people that did this build out.
Yeah.
Because there's an ample amount of extra space in there, and so there's room for expansion within the office itself, and then the adjacent space in the building is also actually empty. It was recently vacated.
Wow.
By a sleep specialist center that moved down the street and built their own kind of Taj Mahal, and so it's room for expansion there. There's I think there's plenty of space for my patient base and the existing patient base, plus the room for growth. It's also in a much better location than mine.
Yeah.
Much better visibility, very high traffic area, and all that kind of stuff. And so it'd be a long-term sort of me looking as this being my last sort of practice, for this being where we kind of end up forever.
Yeah, so it sounds to me, especially in the latter half of your explanation there, that this kind of represents for you an upgrade for your infrastructure of your practice. I mean, this is a better home for you that will better suit your needs and allow you to grow a little bit more. So you're looking into this merger as a means of sort of upgrading the practice you currently have to sort of, build out the bones a little bit more and have some more growth available there?
Yes. Yeah, that's a much better way of saying it than how I said it.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to kind of dilute it down and help people understand, what sort of things will make someone interested in a merger.
So obviously Donald's a big fan of the show,
Right.
and So he's like thinking about that. Like, I don't know.
Qualify that statement.
So the whole solo versus group stuff, obviously we've talked about it a lot and you've heard about it a lot. Where do you see yourself on the spectrum of, solo practice versus desire for future group practice? Like where do you stand on that?
Yeah. So that's something that kind of, that wavers in my mind, because I know that both opportunities have, very unique advantages. Ultimately, I think I'm the kind of person that doesn't really want something like a partner or anything like that. And so, I see myself having one very large practice,
Okay.
probably associate driven, with the potential for specialists and stuff like that coming in. And that's one of the things that really attracted me to this space, is that there's just a lot of room to grow into exactly that, over the next few years.
And did you
describe your current space?
I'm sorry.
My current space is a 1,200 square foot closet, just south of the major highway, with a failing electronics store across the street.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty small. It's 1,250 square feet. It's 4 operatories, one of which we had to just sort of, jerry rig out of the prior office that the owner had. So it was 3 ops when I bought it. We have to maximize every inch of square footage in there.
Right.
The break room / laboratory / storage room is inadequate for the 5 employees that we have, and we're expanding in 6 employees. And so it's one of those things where, every day that we're being productive, you can just feel the walls around you.
They're shutting in.
You can kind of tell that, we need just a little bit more space. And so it certainly represents that.
And then you said 4 operatories?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I mean, you're my buddy. I'm going to roast you for a second here.
I felt it coming.
Like, dude, like the practice, acquisition decision of buying a 4-op practice with group practice is something you're thinking about. Like my vision is one large practice, which sounds so clearly articulated, and the practice you bought is so far from that.
Yeah. Was there a shift? Was that something you knew you wanted before you bought that?
Yeah. So honestly, before at that time, I wasn't really sold or 100% sold on that kind of one very large practice idea.
Okay.
I was more so thinking I probably own like 3 medium-sized ones and something like that. And so I would kind of bounce from one to one to one. And at that time, I thought I would be like the pseudo specialist that, I would just place implants all day and all that kind of stuff. And
and Scott Luna talks about that concept, and we both have heard him speak, and I get where you came from there for sure.
Yeah.
So what shifted?
Yeah. So thinking about and talking to people that own multiple practices, seeing friends of mine that are associates in practices that are like multiple offices, that kind of model, and seeing how it's typically not done very well, how it's done very inefficiently, and how all of those quote unquote benefits that everyone talks about with it don't really come to fruition because there's all these other headaches that end up costing you more money and more time. I'm a person that covets my time more than anything in the world. And so the idea of having 3 locations to deal with, after dealing with one location for a year, I'm like, okay, yeah, one set of front staff and one set of hygiene, that's enough for me. So, I'd rather just kind of that centralized idea rather than 3 locations.
I mean, Donald, I can tell you cover your time because you're complaining about how much time we're on air together. So I think it's I can definitely see that coming. Not to right. This is not everyone, but the people at shared practices tell me that my bias comes through a little bit too strong sometimes with the large group practice. So at the risk of making it come through even stronger, I will say that from experience, a solid infrastructure in one practice can really ease your management load. Having a solid office manager and systems in place in one practice where it can run efficiently with a larger team really eases ownership's load. Actually, I would say that the practice you own is much harder to manage than the practice I own at this point, and that, so I see where you're coming from, and multi-practice is like a lot of those small offices where you have to manage on like in an infrastructure that isn't at a single location, which makes it more challenging. So obviously, I don't disagree with your new vision here. Now, I do want to ask you, so you view this as an opportunity to mainly pivot towards that. You're essentially pivoting visions.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And then Tyler, I interrupted you earlier. You were asking a question. Do you remember what that question was?
Yeah. So I was just, Donald, you may have already said it, but I was curious, is the seller looking to stay on with you, or are you just absorbing the patients? What is the transition going to look like for both of you?
Yeah, the seller's agreed to kind of a short transition, but he doesn't want to be in the practice long term. It'd certainly be a situation where I would most certainly need an associate.
Okay. So with the seller, is the seller trying to retire, or are they just going to go associate somewhere else, or what's the deal?
How do I put this? The seller is a young person who is looking to take a break. He's it's like a hiatus, like a gap year.
Between, okay. Because I know I know in some of these situations when an office is being merged, there's sort of like a hybrid retirement opportunity for that seller. They can kind of stick around, have some income for a while, phase themselves out. But this is not that. This is someone looking to take a holiday.
Yeah, the seller is younger than I am.
Okay. So I
don't think he's retiring.
The COVID holiday wasn't enough.
Yeah, seriously. Anyway, but like, doesn't it? I mean, I feel like for me, the one thing that I'm looking at this opportunity as a red flag is the seller. And, the fact that it was so recently transitioned and it's going to be transitioned again, the fact that you're not moving, the fact that you're going to that location, I think is huge because patients have more location, I guess, loyalty than they do have dentist loyalty, which is a great feeling as a dentist, right? Like I've had patients literally tell me, like, I come here because I've been coming to this building to see this hygienist for so many years, so I tolerate you. It's like, cool. Thanks for tolerating me.
Yep.
But so I think that plays to your favor, but I would think a minimum 6-month associateship, honestly. Is 6 months in the cards, or is that not realistic for the seller?
I don't think that's realistic for the seller. No.
I mean, what are the seller's options? It's not like this guy is like rolling in like all these great choices. Like,
yeah. I don't know. I get the feeling he has like other money that he comes from, and so that it's just there's not a lot of financial pressure for him. Because he doesn't really see himself staying in the practice long after the sale, which I agree is a problem.
Okay, so now it's I remember Richard. I'm looking at opportunity. Every opportunity has its stuff. And I remember Richard told me the best. Richard is so multi-practice oriented now, in his experience owning 3. And so you come from this like really relaxed perspective on these things. And it's like, it too shall pass. Like all of this stuff related to the things that are making you not want to do this will one day pass. And then you'll be left with this very ideal location.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think for me, I'm looking at it as 5 ops, not worth it. Right. So there's a minimum operatory number that makes this worth it, and I think we got to figure out what that is and if there's a way that we can get those ops. I love the it wasn't designed by design ergonomics joke. That, like this 2,700 square feet for 5 ops. Like I thought mine was bad at 3,100 square feet with 8.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know how they wasted that much space. So in the current space you're in, how many ops do you think could be added with relative ease? Like relative ease, like under 100K.
2, I would say.
Okay, so you could be at 7.
Yeah.
And then space next door.
There was an adjacent. Yeah.
The adjacent space is the same size, so.
So realistically, you could have like a 15 op megaplex.
Yeah.
If you want to. Yeah.
Okay. So realistically, we're not looking at the space next door. That seems like, are you looking at it as use this space until I grow into the space next door?
Yes. Yeah. Basically.
Okay. And then, go ahead.
I would like to buy the building.
Is it for sale?
Yeah, the building is for sale.
Oh,
and the current
really?
Yes, the current dentist is not the owner of the building. The prior dentist that sold it to him is.
Wow.
And so the building is for sale.
Ooh, that made the deal like 10 times more attractive. Wow. Let me unpack that for our audience if they didn't see why that's so awesome. So Donald is going to walk into this space and he could potentially make 7 ops. Cool, great, awesome. Now, the problem is that space next door is the linchpin in the whole thing. If he can one day get his hands on it, great. If he doesn't own the building, then that's very loosey-goosey, not up to him whether or not he ends up with that space. If he does own the building, then he is in complete control of what happens to that space next door. Is that correct, Donald?
Yes, sir.
So that's why, and then right, the value of owning the real estate. I think a lot of people would argue, and they're not wrong, that the real estate is just as valuable, if sometimes not more valuable than the practice. So, nowadays with commercial real estate, like all these companies are going at home. Commercial real estate is going to be a more challenging investment, but owning the real estate in which you own a business that operates on top of it is a very safe commercial real estate investment, and those are rare. So, on a lot of levels, the real estate in dentistry is anyway. So, okay.
Can I just say, I love it when there's a moment in these interviews where something gets revealed that just excites George, and like he has to kind of recalculate his whole position on the matter. I love it because it just happened.
Yeah, no, I love this deal more now. The real estate, I think, changes a lot.
Yeah.
Because this is your opportunity to own prime. I mean, you talked about the locations in a good spot. This is probably worth over $1 million in real estate. And this is your opportunity to increase your net worth pretty drastically and move towards your practice vision. So on a lot of levels, it sounds nuts, right? Like you just took out a practice loan. How much was your practice? Do you mind disclosing like roughly a loan size for your current loan?
Current loan is $500,000 with
okay.
the work.
And then this new one is roughly
like 900.
Okay, so we're looking at roughly 1.4, 1.5-ish in practice debt, and so we're buying 2 practices, and now the combination of both offices, you're going to be doing about $2 million out of 7 ops, and so realistically, as somebody that has that size practice, you're out of space already. So you're going to move into 7 ops, and you're going to be out of space,
right?
And so the question is, how are you going to get more space? And so you have now let's talk tactically. The plan is, if we're going to move forward with this, which I love the idea in theory, it just presents a lot of tactical issues. How are you going to manage this crazy seller, right? Let's call it what it is. How are we going to, manage this 2 staffs? How many patients? How are we going to immediately expand the facility to accommodate that? Like, there's a lot of this is like the hardest game of Tetris you'll ever play, and how to navigate that will dictate everything in terms of whether you do it or not, or all that stuff. So do you have any idea of the amount of minimum time you're willing to get out of, or the seller is going to be able to get out of you?
Like 6 weeks, I think it's like.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he wants to like be done. His ideal is like no time.
How did
off.
Okay, what did he pay for the practice?
I think he paid like $750, please.
So he's making a profit on this whole thing?
Yeah, it's a like you said, crazy.
Wait. The seller, are they fully retired? They still own the building.
The seller is a dentist who bought another practice. The story behind the building is pretty interesting, because if I'm remembering correctly, the seller had to buy the building because it was going to go into foreclosure, because the dentist that built the building stopped paying the note on the building. And so the original seller had to buy the building so that he could sell the practice, so that he could buy his kind of dream fee-for-service practice.
How many dentists have worked in this practice in the last 5 years?
3. There's the original guy that built it, first guy that bought it, and then the new crazy guy.
I love crazy guy is the name of the current seller. We're just going to keep that for this whole interview. Wow, that's changed hands. What's their new patient flow?
Yeah, so the new patient flow, it depends on if they're marketing or not. In months when they don't market, it's like 20-ish, 20 to 25. Months where they do market, it's like 35 to 50.
Do you market?
In my practice?
Yeah.
Not as much as I should, but we do.
Okay. Do you market as much as they do?
Yes.
Okay. And you see about 17 is what I see in PBN, like 17, 20 new patients, and they see about 50, 35 to 50.
Yeah.
Okay. And does their practice, I'm assuming like 3 dentists the last 5 years, they have some sort of generic name, generic branding, nothing related to any specific dentist, correct?
Yes.
Man, that dentist is causing a problem.
Mm-hmm.
6 weeks?
Yeah.
Do you have any like associate buddies lined up that would be willing to spot you a year of their life?
Do I think I could find that? Probably.
I mean, realistically, like it takes me 4 months to find an associate. Between the decision to hire an associate and their start date is on average 4 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Like this isn't quick. I know, and you know, you're in a major market. I'm in Phoenix, and you're like in an equally major market in the United States. So it's not like we have a shortage of applicants.
No.
But and like right now, you're new grad, but like, do you really want a new grad associate? No. Like so. Wow. This is quite the conundrum.
Yeah, you kind of
okay. So let's walk through it then, right? Wait, what's with the purchase price? What's with the profit for this guy? Like,
yeah. So I think what he's looking at is getting back his working capital and his prepayment penalty on his note. Like that's what I'm piecing out of this. That he's trying to be clean from the acquisition, basically. Which I don't know if that's his right to do or not. But
I mean, working capital's in his bank account. Can't he like give that to you? Or like, you know what I mean? Like, or use that like, wow.
I'm guessing he spent quite a bit of it.
Okay. So now let's describe, I think, we'll come back to the seller. Let's describe that 2 additional operatories.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you see them going? What's currently there?
Yeah, so we would have to knock down some walls to do that.
Some walls.
Say that again.
Some walls.
Yeah, I mean, there's not like 2 empty spaces that are the size of a dental operatory.
Okay.
And so there are spaces directly adjacent to where the existing operatories are that are either used as storage or just or there are other things in them that just aren't that can go other places. So the practice has an abundance of kind of empty space that is either walled off as storage or it's just empty.
So there's like storage closets just sitting there.
There are more storage closets than you can imagine. There are more storage closets than operatories.
Do you have a dental contractor in your market?
Yeah.
Have you walked this with this guy?
Mm-mm.
That's worth doing.
Okay.
Because, right, what are the things that are going to say no to this opportunity, right? So let me hear your thoughts on this 6-week associateship that you have lined up here with the seller. Like, what are your thoughts on it? Is this something you'd be willing to do?
So it's a problem. Obviously, the thing that confuses it for me a little bit is that that's basically been like the status quo in this office, is that a new dentist has come in every few months or whatever, and the production numbers have stayed the same. And so it's not that I think that like, oh yeah, the patients are just used to that. No, it's not like that. But
no, it won't tank. It won't tank.
Right.
I'm with you.
On the one hand, I'm like, yeah, that's not a very long time. But on the other hand, I don't know that this seller is going to be a positive influence after he sold. Like, he doesn't strike me as the kind of person that, me having him there for 6 months is actually going to improve anything, because he hasn't seen his patients for 6 months,
What are their current hours?
It's super weird. It's like Monday is like 8 to 5, Tuesday is like 9 to 2, Wednesday is I think 8 to 5 again, and then and then Thursdays is another shorter day. Their hours are very strange. They're not just like normal.
Okay. So here's so Donald, do you mind if I like rant for like 10 minutes on, if I were you and I'm pulling the trigger on this, what would I do?
Go for it.
So I would get a dental contractor and I would walk through the space. This seller does not seem like you are going to get much out of him. So I would get my contractor in place and I would say, how fast can I get 2 ops in here? 2 to 3, or how many can I get? How fast? I want as many as possible, as fast as possible. And I want to hear that answer. And if it's something like $100K for 2 ops, in 6 weeks, then I'll take it. Something like that, right? Anything more than that, I'm taking on too big of a project, and I gotta reconsider, right? These are the things that I need to hear to say yes. Then I say, okay, I'm going to lay out a schedule. How many staff members does he have? How many staff members do I have? Is there a way that I can expand hours in this facility and run a split shifted schedule? Let's just call it 7 to 7 Monday through Friday or something crazy like that. Maybe I don't like 7 to 7 on Friday specifically. So in my practice, we just moved to 7 to 6 Monday through Thursday and then 7 to 2 on Friday. So we split shifted my team finally, and we did that. So I would sit down and say, okay, is there a way that this can work scheduling wise, right? Because you have to fit $2 million of production in 7 operatories. So that's going to require some level of split shifting. And I'd lay that out, and then I would ask myself, am I willing to, until I find an associate, work all of those hours? If you answered yes to all of those questions, I'd go for it. And why, right? People listening are like, dude, this guy is bending over backwards to get this deal done. Yeah, because it's his vision. Because he bought a practice 3 miles away from this. And like 5 years from now, right? You have a 14-op practice doing, 4 to 5 million or something like that with, 3 or 4 associates. And are you going to be happy? Yeah, it was worth it. And that was because you had the guts to make this decision, and so that's how I would look at it. And from like the 5 years from now, is this going to matter? No, right? You're going to have some pretty tough cash flow months, and it's going to be hard for you to check that much hygiene. Those are going to be the worst months of your life. But if you can get them lined up, start the associate process and get somebody in quickly, but don't compromise, right? Get a good fit.
Right.
And then you have a split schedule. I can really see it working.
Sure.
And was there anything there that I said that you were a hard no on? I think the biggest one to working that whole schedule, like 7 to 7 Monday to Thursday and 7 to 2 on Friday. And I know you have a baby, so obviously wife is going to hate me, but
right. No, I mean, she understands kind of what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And I actually just had it before we talked today. Just had this conversation about with her about what kind of short-term sacrifices we need to make for our long-term happiness
goals
and that kind of stuff. And so no, I don't think anything on that list is something that I can't accommodate or that we can't accommodate. It certainly isn't something that's just like going to be a walk in the park.
Nope.
I don't think anything about these deals really ever is or should be.
There are always red flags, especially with the group practices. And this isn't a group practice, right? This is even worse. This is like a 5-op practice we're trying to make into a group practice.
Yeah.
But right, it's 3 miles away from your office. When is the next time something like this is going to come up again? Never. Right. So your options are you either sell your practice and you start from scratch somewhere else. But look, I mean, you're $1.4 million in debt with a practice doing $2 million in a major market. I don't think you could have come out better.
Right.
I mean, this practice is doing 100 a month. You're doing 80 a month. So realistically, you're like at 180, which is like 2.2-ish. So, I mean, that's hard to come by.
Right.
I would take that. And that's how you build these things. It's just going to be split shifting. And this is actually great because then you can sort of indoctrinate split shifting into both teams. Like this is the way we do it now. And it's going to be like leadership level 10 required here. Right. This is a leadership exercise in every way, and your ability to get your teams on board and paint the picture and the vision and get them to buy into what's possible and negotiate. Like I just split shifted my team. It's not easy when they're used to specific hours and then you change them and you make them less, or because typically a split shift is hard to get the same 40 hours a week for each employee. So there is some and so it takes knowing your staff's preferences and, playing that game of scheduling Tetris, which sucks. So, it is what it is, but that is what is required.
Yeah.
So, initial thoughts, how, like, what was your 50-50, 80-20, 90-10 that you were going to move forward with this pre-interview?
Sure. Pre-interview, I was like 50-50. Because obviously there's like you said, there's red flags as always, and it is a tremendous amount of work just to make sure everything happens. And it's only heightened by the fact that the cellar is, is bad. And so I was like, there's opportunity to grow where we are. I don't really know if.
I feel like I know the cellar. Do I know the cellar?
I don't think you do. It's highly unlikely you do.
Okay.
I don't think you do. And so, getting, pre-interview, it was like, is there a path that can make this work well,
And now?
Now I'm at least encouraged just to start the very first step of getting an idea of, can we build this out? Because, like 5 ops is nowhere near enough for the total production that we're bringing over.
Like, imagine paying $1 million for an operatory. You would be like the world's biggest, I don't want to call you like world's biggest idiot, but like, dude, $1 million for an op to add to your practice would be like insane, right? Exactly. You could move to a beautiful location for half that has like 9 ops or something like that.
Yeah.
So, and that might be a play for you too, right? Like, let's think of, if this doesn't go through, it's not like your solo practice forever. I don't want to make that sound like, not the best thing ever, but there are other avenues. It's just, this one is like a, you're injecting yourself with the right facility and a lot of patients in a simultaneous, like 2-month period. Like, that's really attractive.
Right.
But if that doesn't go through, you have other options.
Sure. Yeah. No. Absolutely.
What's your lease situation?
So it's a 5+5. So we've got 4 years left on our kind of initial lease. Thankfully my rent is like pretty low for being in a major metro area.
What is your rent?
It's $2,600 a month.
Okay, yeah, not bad. Yeah. Cost of yeah, fine.
Everything included
for 4 years. Yeah,
for over 4 years. But yeah, so after this conversation, I'm for sure, at the very minimum. So I have a contractor that I work with that I worked with to build out my operatory in my new place.
How much did you spend building out an operatory in your place?
That was like $19,000.
That's not bad.
No, it wasn't bad. I mean, the space was there. We didn't have to move any walls or anything like that. And really, all we had to do was, get a sensor, an X-ray sensor, get some tubes, for air and water, and then get a chair in there. So it wasn't too crazy.
And realistically, you could probably sublease the space, prior to the 4 years that you have left or whatever. Like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, hopefully.
I would wait some time though, because then you let all your patients show up in an empty building and then go to the new spot before you let someone else go in there and receive all your patients.
That's great.
But in general, it's not a big deal. And I'm actually surprised at how not expensive as I would have thought dental contracting in an existing location can be. Right. I had a supply closet that I turned into a cone beam room, and it cost me $6,000.
Wow.
Yeah, it was super reasonable.
Just for cables?
We had to blow open a door and take out all the shelving and like repaint and refloor the area, and then run the correct type of electricity and then the internet stuff. I mean, it was like an operation. It took them like 2 days, but still, I would have thought it would have been more expensive than that.
Right. Yeah.
So who knows? Let's see where you're at, and let's see what happens from there.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I'll say, I'm still excited about the prospect because, I'm very much a long-term kind of person. I don't usually get bogged down in the like tiny little details of every day and every moment. I'm very much a big picture kind of person.
Wait, most important question. How many hygienists does this guy have?
I believe the patient base would support 3.5.
How many do they have currently?
They have 1.5, 1 3/4.
Perfect.
And I have 2. So
you're walking in with 4 and you're split shifting. So realistically, you have 2 or 3 at a time.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Do you feel comfortable checking for 2 with ease?
Checking 2 columns of hygiene with ease?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing it for the last year or so.
Okay. So you'll be checking for 3 at times.
Yeah.
But yeah, so 2 or 3, right? We got 7 ops. Then, you'll realistically be able to run. Man, if you could get an 8 in there, that would be huge. 8's going to be really tight though. I mean, I don't know how many closets they have, but
Closets.
Yeah. Yeah, the building is a giant closet. But anyway, Tyler, haven't heard from you in a minute. I'm sorry. I said 10 minutes. I think that was about right. But where are you at on things?
Well, my show's been hijacked before, so it's not the first time. But no, I've just been kind of sitting back and listening and taking notes, and I think some interesting things have come up. What I see here for Donald is, we're kind of looking at it as a pivot. Obviously, I mean, he sort of bought into a practice that does not really agree with his long-term vision, and he's looking for what he can do to pivot out of that. And I think this is sort of, this talking about a merger is kind of an interesting way to think about it, because we always talk about buying the right practice the first time, and we always try and get people into the mode of thinking that way. But obviously we have long careers, and there are always options down the road. And he's looking at this, and I think there, if all the right pieces fall into place, it could really be a great opportunity for him. So it's been good listening to it.
I think there's a conversation to be had with the seller about expectations. Like, dude, you don't just get to buy a practice and 6 months later get everything you want and leave and not have to deal with anything you don't want. Like, that seems a little nuts. Have we talked to lending at all?
I've started the process with that. Basically, I've gotten really good, positive feedback from the lenders I've spoken to. They just need us to get back to something near
pre-COVID numbers. Yeah. They want 4 to 6 weeks of that level of stability, which is fine, right? Anything that pushes this timeline off and gives you time. If things go well, I'd get the associate ad out quick and start screening and interviewing people and get that contractor in there and get some information on that. But in general, right? And then I would also talk to banks about the loan for construction.
Mm-hmm.
If it's $100,000, I don't know how liquid you are, but if you had to front that yourself, is that something you could possibly handle?
Yes. So I mean, we had kind of thought about that. We would rather not. I'm like a liquidity
Yeah, I'm a liquidity person too, and I'd rather not. For anything. But like, it's always nice to have the idea that, like, if I can't get a loan, this isn't going to hold me back.
Yes, no.
Because getting a loan for the practice is one thing, but the construction loan and everything might be a different story.
Yeah, if we had to, we could.
Okay. So we don't have a great follow-up system on the Shared Practices podcast. That is the one area, because I have 3 hygienists that listen to the show. 3 of mine do. And I'll always hear from them like, "Hey, what happened with the guest blank?" I'm like, "I don't know." So we need some type of follow-up mechanism.
Sure.
But you'll keep me updated via Facebook Messenger, and the thumbs ups means I received and acknowledged that message, and appreciate your reaching out with the update.
Yeah, it's always nice to know that your existence is acknowledged. We all appreciate that, truly.
Do you have any remaining lingering questions for us about the opportunity before we wrap up?
No, I mean, you guys had mentioned, it's important to buy the right practice, and that's, obviously I agree with that 100%. And so, like, the interesting thing here is, like, the right practice for me changed over time, and so that's one of the good things about dentistry is, like, it offers tremendous flexibility with everything that we do.
Yep.
And so, I want to encourage people to, like, take risks and be bold, because, like, on paper, this is one of those things where you're looking at this, you're like, God, like, this is a lot.
What a terrible idea. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot to take on. But if you kind of have just have that, that big picture, it's like, how am I going to get to where I want to be in a market like mine? Well, this is one of the few ways to do it. And sometimes that means, taking some stuff on the chin, or it means just, a lot of really stressful months, like you said. But I'm excited.
Right. And I think that's an important point, because when we put so much emphasis on making it right the first time, some people will then resolve, well, maybe I shouldn't be making this choice. And that's an unattainable feeling. So, if you let that hinder you from actually making moves, then you have to consider the cost of inaction, and it can be great.
I kind of want to piggyback off of what Donald said, because I don't think people realize I had a major pivot as well. I'm divorced. In a lot of ways, that's a major pivot in your life. In your career, you kind of have the same type of thing. I backed into my ADOP practice. I really did. As much as we talk about, and the reason I bring up the divorce thing is because, like, we talk about it so much on the show, try to figure out what you want before you commit, so that you don't do, kind of like the same marriage thing, right? Try to be careful about who you marry so that like, you don't get divorced. So we keep talking about on the show how we try so hard to get our pre-owners to know who they are so that they can make an educated decision on what their future practice model is, but the reality is, I think, you do that, you try the best you can, but then when you go into it, you sort of take whatever comes and you sort of listen to yourself and you let yourself pivot. And for me, I bought an ADOP practice on accident. I was actually, one of my concerns was that it's too much space. And I wanted to be a solo. And then I very quickly pivoted into a different model. I had the space, so it was easy. In your case, right? Like you thought you wanted solo and you bought it. And then you sort of are realizing now that maybe I want something a little bigger, only one instead of multiple, the shift that you made. But I think for our audience, we talk so much about trying to make the right decision for you or long-term future. We don't talk as much about how it's okay to pivot. That's just listening and that's being true to who you are. And success always favors the bold, like what Donald said. Success favors the people who are willing to take risks and do those things. And so, yeah, obviously you try your hardest to get it right the first time. And I'm not saying you didn't get it right, but if we're looking at this objectively, 1 year in, moving your practice and changing your vision, like at some point, like maybe I think that could be classified as not getting it right. In a lot of ways. Would you regret it or do it differently? Of course not. You've been super successful, and so it is what it is. But I think you try your best to get it right the first time, but it's always okay to pivot. And for me, I can say that both personally and professionally, that has happened to me. And if it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. And so, I spent more time thinking about this than anybody else probably ever, and pivoted majorly in 2 departments. So, I mean, it is part of it. And I think it's cool for our pre-owners to get this sort of, you try your best, you do what you think is best, and you just live with the results, and it's okay. You allow yourself to pivot if that's what's called for. So I think this is a cool episode for our pre-owners to listen to, because it gives them a different outlook of, look, we talk so much about getting it right the first time. We don't talk as much about, if you don't, there are plenty, like you said, this industry offers a lot of flexibility. Like you guys both know, but I don't think I've publicly shared it on this podcast. I'm going from practicing, at my height 4 days a week to not a half day a week, and that is a major pivot, and that's like, but this industry gives us that ability to pivot. And so, if not a lot of jobs do that. So I think we're very fortunate. But I also think this is a great example for somebody out there who's, maybe a little bit like, I don't know if this is the right thing for me. You kind of just go for it. And the wrong decision is better than no decision. Donald, do you have anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, it's been a great fun. Hopefully my energy
fun.
level was high enough for everyone.
It wasn't, but I'll let it slide.
Okay. Thanks, George. Again, I appreciate it. Huge.
Huge. Donald is using huge words. As big as his hands.
Yeah. So, God. No, I do appreciate the time. And absolutely, we need to follow up. Because there'll be a point where either it's happening or it's not, and so it'll be some interesting things that all happen very quickly. And so I'm sure the story will continue.
Yeah, keep me updated, and I'll try to relay that back to our audience at some point. Maybe we have like a follow-up episode. We follow up with all of our guests, and then we go through it once. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Anyway,
maybe I won't be president then. So.
There you go. Maybe we need you back on Practice Underwater now. We're going to keep flip-flopping you back and forth. You're on Practice Underwater with Matt, and then you go here, and then we'll have you back on Practice Underwater to talk about the loves of a split schedule with 7 ops and 2 different teams coming together. I'm sure there will be nothing to talk about in that interview.
No.
All right. Thanks again, Donald. This was fun. I'll let Tyler sign off.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're looking at taking on a tremendous effort, and we've been talking about that throughout the episode, but there's also a tremendous cost to, not engaging in that change and letting things kind of stay the way they are. I mean, you talked about feeling like the walls are closing in on you. I mean, that sounds like a pretty reasonable, cost to be considering, when you're trying to decide which way to go. And of course, our industry is flexible. There are other things you could do at a different time, but I think what you've got here is worth pursuing. And again, I really appreciate you being on here, Donald. I really hope the pieces fall into place for you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.